think this is one of the most magical looking sights in all of serendipity, especially right now in the spring. The star jasmine hasn't bloomed yet, but I know it's going to be any time now, especially once the weather starts warming up. That's when the flowers just start to appear, and I think it is one of the most beautiful sights in all of serendipity. One thing I am noticing is there's new growth starting to pop up, like right there, and that means the flowers are going to be on their way soon. Oh, and I can't wait. I think this is one of the most magical looking sights in all of serendipity, especially right now in the spring. One thing I want to do this year is replace all of the string lights that I have on them. They're these little ones. I think I'm going to purchase some bigger ones, but these don't even come on anymore because the rats bit through the wiring, and so they're not hooked up to anything anymore. So I'm going to purchase some new ones, and I'll try and place the stake somewhere up high where critters can't get to it quite as easily, because the other ones I actually had them staked into these containers and the rats just went at them. I really want to replace them because when it's full of blooms and all of the foliage, the lights spread out a little bit more sporadically and it looks like a magical dream. I am obsessed with the way it looks. And then in the front of the arbor, I have some iceberg roses. You can see how much they've grown since the last time that I did a garden tour. They're starting to fill out very nicely. When I first planted them, they were on clearance at Lowe's, and I had wanted iceberg roses for such a long time because they produce a lot of blooms. They handle the heat pretty good, and in general, they just perform really well here in the low desert. Plus, they're white, so the white against the green, I think just looks really stunning no matter what. But at the time I was on a really tight budget, so I waited, and one day I stopped by Lowe's and I saw them in the clearance section, and oh my gosh, I was so happy, you guys. I was so happy. I immediately grabbed them. I immediately grabbed them, and when I got home, I just couldn't wait to place them in the garden. Let me show you what I just scored. Before I show you, I want to tell you the backstory. So I started gardening last year around August. So my garden is now a year old. And when I started gardening, there were certain plants that I knew I wanted for sure. And one of them was an iceberg rose. At the time, the iceberg roses were around $30. I think some of them were even like $40 a piece. And I thought, no, there's no way. My heart's telling me yes, but my wallet's telling me no. So then a week ago, I stopped at Lowe's and I saw they had iceberg roses for around $20 or $21 a piece. And I thought, oh, that is so much cheaper, but I want two of them. And that's still gonna add up to $40. And then what about the pots for them? That's just still a little bit too much. But I couldn't get them out of my head. So I thought, what if I just buy one? 20 bucks isn't too bad. Maybe I can try and propagate that one. So then today I stopped by Lowe's and I was like, let me just look at them. I'm probably not gonna get them. I just wanna stare at them. I went and they were gone. So I thought, oh, okay, fine. It just wasn't meant to be. People bought them all, which is good. So I'm not tempted to get one. And before I left, I thought, let me just go check the clearance section. Maybe they've got some good stuff. There they were. Here's the price tag. $20.98 a piece. And that's what they'll look like. They're beautiful. I got both of these for 20 bucks. Last year, I bought my peace rose, which was half dead, for 15 bucks. I got both of these beautiful rose bushes for 20 bucks. Should I go buy a lottery ticket or should I go buy a lottery ticket? So then I needed pots for them. So I found these pots at Walmart. They're this brand, and I thought, okay, they're the perfect color, they're the perfect size, they're not too big, not too small, and I can still up pot if I ever feel like it. It said they were around $9 a piece, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm saving on the roses. I'll just get the two, that's 20 bucks. I went to checkout, they were 5 bucks a piece. I feel like that pot is the perfect size because it's not too wide, it's tall enough, but there's a height difference and a size difference, so There's like a good little variation. Plus I can add other little pots around it to give it more of that cottagey feel. And then this way the arbor becomes the main entrance. It gets better. So I was looking for birdhouse gourd seeds because you can turn those into like little watering cans, into actual birdhouses. I wanted to turn some into planters so that I could have like right up against the roses, maybe like some different types of herbs or maybe some smaller annual flowers or even strawberries, but I don't know if this might get too much sun. Okay, anyways, I went online and I thought, oh, can I find them cheaper somewhere else? Because I'm not gonna eat them. They're more for like DIY projects. I looked at Lowe's, couldn't find any. I went to Walmart and 50 cents. 50 cents. So I got 2 of them. And I also found these from Burpee called large bottle gourd. They look like the exact same gourd, but just in case they might be bigger, I got both. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you guys because I feel like I just won the lottery. And I think they just look so gorgeous in front of the arbor. They just make everything tie in together perfectly. Moving on to this side of the arbor, I have a bunch of tomatoes in the front. I definitely can't wait to replace these tomatoes with something else just because I think it looks very messy. Maybe once they start leafing out more, it won't look quite as stringy, but as of right now I just feel like all I can see is the strings and it blocks off the beauty from the trees behind it. Like this one, which is a clementine, and look how many blooms the tree has. Even if I just stand right here, all of the white that you see is flower blooms of possible clementines that we can get this year. And if I come in closer, look at that. It's covered in blooms. This is the other tree that I also buried way too deep in the garden when I first started gardening because I didn't know how to plant trees. So it looked very, very sick forever, and I tried everything to fix it. It wasn't flowering for us. Oh, at first it wasn't flowering, and then eventually it did start flowering, but it never set any of the fruit. And the tree always looks sad, and I feel like you can just tell when the leaves look yellow and it's struggling. You can tell when a tree's really happy and the leaves are coming out really lush and green and it continues to grow, and then there's other trees that seem to be stunted. And this tree was definitely stunted until I realized that I planted it too deep. I dug it out. I cut off a good chunk of all of the roots that it had to the point where when I planted it, it couldn't even stand on its own anymore. A slight breeze would start to make it kind of topple over. I think this is leftover metal conduit that my husband had from another project. I placed it in there and that helped to keep the tree up while it recovered. But soon I'm going to go ahead and take it out because I feel like the tree is good on its own now. But that's what it looks like. Oh, it makes me feel so happy to see all that new growth. Let me walk around because there's a few other trees here that you just won't be able to see from the other side. Next to the clementine is an olive tree, and this is a frondoio olive, and look how beautiful it is. It's pushing out new growth. It's still pretty small though, so it needs some time to start coming into its own, but I'm excited to see it take shape. In this container, we just have some bolting lettuce. This used to house my pink tropic guava, but last summer I lost the tree to the heat. So this summer I'm going to replace it, and then I'll probably pick up a few more varieties of guavas because that's one of my favorite fruit of all time. And then next to that is the red Malaysian guava, and this one's a really beautiful tree that works well as an ornamental, but it also produces edible fruit. And this little tree definitely had a little bit of frost damage here and there. Last weekend I trimmed it back to give it a bit more of a cleaner shape, and it's already started leafing out and pushing out new growth, which you can see right there. It's so pretty. This tree produces some really beautiful fruit. The guavas are nice and tasty, but the only thing I don't like about them is that they're not like the other guavas. Like the tropic white guavas are so sweet. I love the crunch on it. It tastes way more flavorful. It tastes way more flavorful than the ones I buy at the store. With the red Malaysian guavas, if I harvest them a little bit too early, they have an astringent taste to them. And if I harvest them, so they have to be really, really ripe and be picked at the right time for them to be extra, extra tasty. But the tree itself is really beautiful. I just feel like out of all the guavas I've tried so far, it's not my favorite taste-wise. Recently, I moved my bench over on this side just because when my kids are out here playing, it feels really nice to be able to sit down and have a view of the entire garden. I used to have the bench on my porch, but I feel like we rarely use it on the porch because we're always out here. Okay, so first I'm going to show you the bird bath. I mentioned previously that I wanted to do a pink theme this year, but I went to the garden center with my kids and they started choosing their own colors, and I can't say no to them. Sometimes I have color themes that I want to work on, but they're small still, and seeing their excitement when it comes to gardening is one of the main reasons that I continue to work so hard in the garden, because I want to create a really beautiful space for them. And if I see any budding interest for gardening in them, I don't ever want to I don't ever want to I don't ever want to take that away, or I don't ever want to take that away, or what is the word? Or stop them from being creative and looking at plants and being excited about plants, because I feel like that's what's helped me with this garden, is that excitement can't go away. That excitement and that love and that passion has to always remain fresh. And so whenever they want to try something, I'm like, okay, let's do it. You guys wanted pink, yellow, and white? Okay, let's do pink, yellow, and white. And I think it looks really beautiful. The colors totally remind me of spring. I mean, look at that. And it even makes the pink on the peach tree pop out with all those blooms. So that's what this looks like. I did keep a few of the chives in there just because I didn't have the heart to pull them out, so I figured that would just add a little bit of texture. And if I'm being totally honest with you, I don't even know what the name of a lot of these flowers are. I know a lot about you think I know having this garden, but I really don't. I know we have petunias in there and other cool stuff. Okay, back to the trees. This is a Santa Rosa plum, which, as you can see, it is still asleep. It's alive though, just very, very bare right now. This was one of the trees that was the last to go to sleep last year, and it's also one of the last trees to wake up. But the buds are starting to pull away from the branches, so I know it's only a matter of time before it starts leafing out. And this is one of those trees that tends to grow very, very quickly here in the low desert. So once the first few set of leaves appear, the rest of it should be leafing out rather quickly. Next to that is all of the leeks that I planted, which are looking beautiful. So thick and luscious. Oh my gosh. I've never grown leeks like these. And the crazy part is that these are planted in a container. It's a really big container, so I feel like that definitely helps. But I think what really made the biggest difference is planting them extra deep, and also planting them where they get a good amount of sun, because when I first tried to grow them last year, I planted them in the shade. I planted them in an area where they got shaded out, and they weren't happy for very long. The leeks that I got were nowhere this size. And with these, I can already start to see the trunks thickening up really, really nicely, or the stalks thickening up. In this container, we have potatoes beginning to sprout. This one's kind of empty. There's just one plant in there that is epazote. At first, I actually pulled it out because I thought it was a weed, and then I smelled it and I was like, wait, no, I don't even have seeds for this plant. So I'm trying to let it grow, and I'm gonna plant something else in this container. I'm not sure what yet, probably sweet potato. And in the meantime, the epazote can just continue growing. Moving on to my Florida Prince peach. This is by far my favorite site in all of Serendipity, just because I have never had this many blooms on a fruit tree. Just because I've never had this many blooms on any of my peach trees. This is probably the oldest peach tree, and it's a variety that performs really well here in the low desert. It's called Florida Prince Peach. Last year we got delicious, delicious fruit. It wasn't a ton, but it wasn't too little. But there was nowhere near this many blooms. And last year, most of the blooms that it did make were double blooms, kind of like this one here. You see that? Where it looks like there's little twins. But this year, the majority of them look like this. Look at that. And there's so many on every single branch, so I'm definitely going to have to come through and thin them out. And I even see a bee right there. Whoa. The bees are everywhere now. All of the blooms that you see right here will have the fruit popping out soon, because most of the petals have begun falling off, but it still looks really, really pretty. The pink definitely pops, and it looks gorgeous against the green leaves. I've been trying to record every single day, or at least most days of the week, the progress of this tree, because it really does change from day to day. I also see a black panther back there. next container has more potatoes, some, what is this? This is some artichoke, and then back there is a new citrus that my kids planted. This is a navel orange, and I need to add one more piece of tie tape because, as you can see, most of the trees, when I first plant them in serendipity, this is what they look like. Do you see how thin those trunks are? And then over time, I get them to that size and that size so that the trees are a lot more mature and able to hold on to fruit. This one's just a baby. But it's crazy to see because at one point, most of the trees in all of serendipity looked like that. At one point, there were these tiny, few feet tall little plants, and now they're towering over me, and they make the garden and they make the space feel a lot bigger than it actually is because my backyard's not very big at all. I don't know the exact square footage. I feel like I need to go through the floor plans to be able to look at it, but it's not a big yard at all. It's just the way that I've laid things out that helps it look a lot bigger than it really is. Next to the Florida Prince Peach is my Pakistan mulberry, also in a 25-gallon container. And this one I recently pruned because this tree just grows very, very quickly and it grows huge, especially here in the low desert. This one would work really well as a shade tree in a backyard. Look at those leaves. And this year we're getting fruit from it. Look at that. It is so beautiful. I'm very excited for my kids to try this fruit because they've never tried it before. And I think the tree just looks stunning in all of serendipity. It's definitely going to help to add a little bit of shade to the plants around it, especially during the summertime. I think one thing that would be really cool if I did is train some of the branches to go behind some of the other plants. No, but that might be too difficult. Anyways, I think this is definitely one of the prettiest trees in the yard too, just because of how big and lush it is. And it's actually one of the newer trees as well. You wouldn't know that just by looking at it because it's massive, but these trees just grow really, really fast. And if I didn't prune it, it would be way taller than the shade cloth is right now. Here in the front, I have some more potatoes, which maybe I'm going to see if any of these are ready to harvest because the plants are flopping down everywhere. Behind those, we have some leeks. Here is some sweet potato that started coming back on its own. But I have a few slips that I'm starting indoors too that I'm going to transplant out. And then in back of that, I have a golden Dorset apple tree. Right there. Look how small that is. You can't tell just how little it is when the basil is in front of it. And the reason I have basil in front of it is to help shield it from the sun, especially during the summertime. Because during the summer, we get a lot of sun coming in this way and this way. And so I like to plant basil or heat-loving plants around some of my more sun-sensitive trees to give them a little bit of protection and insulation from the intense sun rays. And this tree's pushing out a lot of new growth. It didn't go to sleep last year. It didn't drop any of its leaves, so you can see some of the older ones still on there. But look at the new growth that it's putting on. Even though I didn't lose its leaves and it's still pretty small, I don't mind because I've lost, out of all the trees in the garden, I've lost the most amount of apple trees than anything else. And the whole reason I even planted apple trees is for one of my gremlins. She wants homegrown apples, so that's what I've been working on and trying to improve because the last few years I've been unsuccessful, but hopefully these make it. There's some more leeks back there, and then the garlic that I planted in this container. And that's the sound of the irrigation. Can you hear it? Okay. Anyways, on the corner of Aurora Boulevard is a sweet key lime. And this was a rescue tree for my mother-in-law. You can see how much growth it's put on since last week. That is insane to me. I pruned this tree back heavily as well because I'm just trying to work on the shape, trying to make it look really nice and clean. And look at all the blooms it's putting on. I was not expecting this little, oh, I need to cut this one off. It has a lot of thorns, but I was not expecting this tree to try and flower anytime soon just because it went through a huge shock. This tree used to live in the ground actually for probably over 10 years. It's very, very old. It was very wild, very gnarled. And I brought it to serendipity because I felt horrible. I didn't want it to get thrown away or anything. But when I first brought it home, I was 50-50. I thought there's a high likelihood that it's not going to make it. What's that noise? Hold on. Let me check the irrigation. Oh, okay. I see. To be completely honest with you, when I brought the tree home, I was 50-50 about whether it would make it or not because it was really hot. It was during the blazing heat of summer. The tree was really old and it was in the ground for many, many years. So already we were going to have to cut off a lot of the roots. It was going to go through quite a bit of shock. And going from being in the ground to being in a container is very different because it was growing for all of its life in completely different soil. So I tried my best. I mixed up the soil, made sure it was really well draining. I added a lot of mycorrhizae to the roots. I pruned off most of the branches, pruned off a bunch of the roots, cut off several more trunks because it had a ton of them. And we were left with, not this, we were left with a very sad looking tree. And all summer long, I was very, very anxious to see whether it would make it or not. And then one day I started noticing new growth. And since then, it hasn't slowed down. I think it's really happy here. It's set up on irrigation, so it's watered on a schedule. It's got good soil. It's in a really nice microclimate. It's got shade cloth above it. I feel like this tree is just very happy here. And I'm glad. Oh wait, I started moving on to Aurora Boulevard. I didn't even finish Iokai. Let me show you the other side of Iokai actually.